Chris, podcast 52. The year's end podcast.
Year's end. We
Can
did
you
52 weeks.
52 weeks in a row? A
It's
whole
not
year.
easy. It's not
No,
easy.
well, it's easy. It's just
No,
you're always napping.
no. It's not easy coming up with. I don't know. I mean, some it is. Sometimes it's easy to come up with a subject. Sometimes it's not.
Yeah. Well, I think tonight we got a good one.
Yeah, it
I think it's
sounds
a
like
good.
it. Sounds
Yeah, I
like
think it's a
it's.
good one.
Sounds like it'd be all right because
So,
some people will be really interested in it.
yeah, I want to talk about some stuff and then probably go for about 45 minutes or so tonight. But or whatever it ends up being. But first of all, I want to say season one, 52 weeks in a row. Really appreciate everybody listening and watching on Chris's channel. And I want to say to everybody listening on the podcast, if there's tons of listeners, but if you guys enjoy the podcast for at least for the year end of this for the season one, drop us some comments on Apple
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
and
let us know.
Spotify.
Yeah, I'm sorry,
Yeah,
but let
just
us know what you're
yep.
thinking. Like, do you like this format? Is there other subjects you want to talk about?
Hmm.
Do we
Yeah,
blah 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 too much? Do we joke
yeah.
around too much? Do we talk about one subject too much? Let us
Hmm.
know,
Yeah, give us
positive or
some,
negative.
especially on like iTunes. Give us some comments on there, guys. If you're listening, you enjoy it, ask a question, drop a comment, whatever. And the reason I say that is it's a new podcast, but we get a lot of downloads, I guess you call it. But we're still we rank pretty low within the iTunes charts, and I think that's because obviously it's views, but a lot of it is comments too. It kind of works. I think it works the same way as like the algorithm and everything. More people listen and comment and all that stuff. So
So
that's
we
just a
need more
favor
interaction. You think?
on the podcast. Yeah,
Yeah.
on the audio side of things. So like Spotify, iTunes, things like that. So that would uh that would definitely help us out. So that's our year end favor to you guys listening on the podcast. Um, with that said, I just thanks again for everybody listening, tuning in, and really appreciate that. And anything you guys want to hear leading into 2024, which would be season two of the podcast, again, drop us comments, let us know, and we will make an entire episode about it.
Yeah, man.
So, with that said, again, thank you. And today's topic is there's a few questions that popped up about this recently, but it's how do you physically grow bigger deer? Is it even possible? And I want to I want to lay out the basics, the foundations of what needs to take place in order for this to happen. And then I want to discuss the topics or the situations where it's virtually impossible for it to happen. And we both have experience with this because Chris has been working on a property for the past, what, 3 years now?
Well,
And
probably going on 4. Yeah.
four. And you have seen drastic
Big changes.
results
Hmm.
in that situation. We did it together at the old farm. We seen drastic changes. So um and I, been doing it a long time. So let's dive into it. So again, I want to lay out the things that's required in order for this to happen.
Okay.
Number one is you have to have food. If you don't have food on your property, it's you're going to see limited results with this. And food, I mean browse. You, if you guys think about this, in areas of big agricultural settings, you typically have larger deer. Why is that? Because you have open fields, you have open hedgerows, the sun's hitting the hedgerows, you get browse growing up on the edges, you have more food in an ag situation. Not to mention you got the beans, the corn, and all that stuff. So you have more food in those ag situations compared to when me and Chris have hundreds of videos on the old farm. That would be considered a big wood setting where there's no ag, there's no food, closed canopy, limited. When me and you first got there, deer were skinny and they were so hungry they were eating pine needles. So we transformed that 100%, but that's two situations. You have ag country and then you have big wood settings. Big wood settings, typically you have less food, skinnier deer. Ag setting, you have bigger deer, fuller looking, body weights are up. That's typically what you see. The percentages, I don't know, but that's typically from what I've seen over the 25 years of deer hunting. What do you have to say about that?
Well, yeah, you have to, the browse is the staple of a deer's diet.
Hmm.
I'm sure when you opened up with that statement, somebody was thinking, "Oh, you got to have food. Oh, you got to plant a food plot." No, that's
Hmm.
not where he was starting. The browse is the staple. They don't need our food plots. Food plots are supplemental. They don't need us to feed them, supplementally either by dumping corn piles out or whatever. They
Hmm.
don't need that either. They will make it just fine in any big wood setting. Where I buck hunt at, there is nothing there, nothing. It's just big woods. So they're relying on bumper crop of acorns and beech nuts and so on and so forth with the briars and the berries and
Hmm.
everything there, and it is over top of a river, so there's plenty of water there. And yeah, browse is the staple.
Yeah,
It's where
browse definitely the
it's where it
staple.
all starts.
Yep. But again, there's so many variables in this. It's because let's say you're in a big wood setting surrounded by hundreds of acres of woods. It's all closed canopy. All of a sudden, you take your little 20-acre property and say you select cut it, and in 5 years you get a flush of growth, and you get tons of food on that within that 20 acres. Is that really going to make a difference? Probably not. I mean, you might put a couple pounds on the deer, maybe from all the extra flush of growth. But if nobody within that hundreds of acres does anything else, you're going to see limited results. I mean,
Well, they're going to over browse it.
yes, they're going to overbrowse it, and
It's
you might
just
be,
like it's just like planting a
yeah,
small food plot and there's too
right,
many deer.
right,
Same idea.
yeah.
They're just
So
going to come in and demolish it as soon
you
as it
might
starts
start
to
out,
flush.
yep, you might start out good, and then it might be eaten away. But if everybody within that hundreds of acres did the same thing, that's when you see a dramatic benefit.
Yeah.
Okay, that's on the natural browse side of things,
I
food
mean,
wise.
something's better than nothing.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
yeah, if a lot of people had they all made clearings or whatever and got the sun down to the forest floor and had a
Hmm.
flush of green going, yeah, there would be a feeding frenzy.
100%. Yeah, so you have to take that into consideration. Like I said, you got these guys that I'll get calls too for like clients. They're like, "Hey, I got 7 acres. What can I do to grow deer?" And I'm like, "Well, where you at?" And you're like, then I'm like, "Dude, I can't help you, man. You're." They're like, "I want to shoot 170-inch deer in Pennsylvania on seven
On
eight." I'm
seven
like,
acres. Hey, I mean, it's not impossible, but
"No, but
they're probably
it's
not gonna grow them on that property, obviously.
it takes special circumstances in order for this to take place." So, like I said, we're giving you what needs to happen in order for this to
Yeah.
physically put on pounds on the body and bigger antlers. We're giving you the staples of it. Whether it works for you, it probably not. It takes a very special situation.
So maybe we should have backed up and prefaced the browse with you need enough acreage to support
Hmm.
the deer population where you're going to be first of all, and then
You
you have to
better,
have browse on
yeah,
that acreage.
you better be knocking on all your neighbors' doors and telling them they need to do the same thing in order for this to take place. Um, so that's number one. You have to have quality browse, whether that's how do you get it? Hinge cutting, select cutting, clear cutting, forestry work, TSI work, whatever
Burn,
it takes in order to
burning.
get that sunlight to the
Hmm.
ground. You could do burns, certain parts of the country you can do burns, and that'll you'll get a fresh flush of green growth. And then you'll set back the woody browse part of it, but you'll get the green, and then in a couple years you'll get the woody browse. So various things you can do to improve it. Is it going to work on your property? Well, how many acres do you have? Are you secluded to where those deer can really get enough from your property? So can take that into consideration, but you have to have the browse.
for
Number
sure.
two into this is supplemental, which is if you want to take things to the next level, you have to supplement them. How do you supplement them? The main thing is food plots, having something green and growing in high quality, fertile soil. How does that happen? Well, you have
Soil
to get
testing. Gotta
soil
figure
samples.
it out.
Yep. We soil test usually once or twice a year. You build on that each year. You want to get your NPK levels up, and then you can ask for an additional test, which is getting a micronutrient panel. I did this several times at the old farm. At it's a couple extra dollars more, but you can get micronutrient tests, and you can look at the micronutrients. Micronutrients are the number one thing that's missing in soils these days. They're just not there. That's why like our food quality on vegetables and stuff are so low in micronutrients
They could
because
pay a couple extra bucks and get that organic matter test done too.
yeah, yep, get the
That's always good to know.
yeah. Um, but yeah, you got to start with the soil. It all starts with high quality fertile soil. That's the base because you get those nutrients in there that give it to the plants and the plants give it to the deer. So if you're trying to supplement and you're lacking on all these different nutrients, that plant can only do so much. So it can
Yeah,
only
I have that situation where I'm at. This part of PA is not that fertile.
mhm,
Uh, if you go out east towards Lancaster, oh my gosh, they have the most fertile soil in PA, I swear.
it's all
You know,
Amish
yeah, all that
horse
they
manure.
claim the glaciers pushed down the soil down there hundreds and hundreds of years ago, whatever. But anyhow, I get jealous when we talk to the boys at Domain
Mhm,
and I, up in Wisconsin there, and they're seeing like plants in a month that are a foot tall, and in a month we're like 2 3 inches. You
yeah.
know, but they have just different soil up there, and you can tell by the size of the deer.
Mhm,
You know, their deer on average, we're shooting 140, 150 pound buck, and we think, wow, that's a big deer. Good gosh, they got deer out there pushing, 200 pounds. And it's like it all is a big stepping stone because it starts here. They
mhm,
have this, and then they have that, and it just builds its building blocks
mhm.
just as we're gonna lay it out here.
Yeah, there's a lot to the soil situation. Like I remember a long time ago when I hunted Ohio, they had 200-pound bucks that were 2.5 years old.
Hmm.
Where's that coming from? Well, it's coming from, supplements and food plots, but it's the soil too
Yeah.
that's giving it because what happens is, and I'm not an expert on this, but like it's the same situation with like, cows and stuff. There's a certain percentage of like digestible proteins that need to take place. And digestible means, how much of that food is actually sticking to the ribs of the animal. So I've seen a lot of dairy farms where the cows are crapping, diarrhea. Well, anytime any of us have diarrhea, there's something going on. You're not something's happening, and it's male nourishment to where those food you eat, you're just crapping right out. It's not staying in your body. It's not helping you gain weight. So it's the same with like cows. I've seen them diarrhea. It's not good. And deer can do the same thing. They can have that situation happen where they're basically eating something and they're just pooping it right out. And what needs to take place? Well, within those mechanisms and nutrients in the plant, if something is off, it throws everything else off. So that's why, like when you look at like a micronutrient panel, it'll show you what's high level, low level, medium, low, whatever. And if one of those micronutrients are low, it binds up other things. So it all has to kind of work hand in hand together for all those nutrients to take place in that animal for it to work properly, basically. So there's a lot to it, but it all starts with a basic soil sample.
Yeah, and if they don't understand how to read their soil sample, that could be an issue.
Hmm.
So they need to research that, because a lot. I think it scares a lot of people. That's why they skip the step.
Hmm.
They don't understand how to read it, so they
Yeah.
skip it,
Yeah.
plain and simple.
Yeah. Well, how do you increase micronutrients? Well, they sell synthetic. What's that stuff we used to use at the old farm? What was it called? We got it from J&J with the micronutrients in it.
Oh, that was
Ag or something fertilizer.
yeah.
The blue and white bag.
You put me on the spot. Now I
Yeah.
can't think.
Well, think of it, but it's
Yeah.
basically a starter fertilizer, and it gives you, it's a
Well, we
small
was getting it
percentage.
in. We was getting it in 10-10-10,
Yeah, it was 10
but it
10
was
10
from a
starter.
company. It was from a company out in Ohio,
Yes, and it
and
basically has
it had
small
micros
amounts.
in it. Yeah.
Yeah, that can help. Um, Turning in green manure into the soil can help.
Now you got me
Um,
wondering there.
yep, no-till methods, all that stuff can help micronutrients take place. Um, like I said, decomposing green manure into the soil will uh, will increase micronutrients. Um, but you have to get the NPK levels up, like adding fertilizer, rotations of different, buckwheat rotations, wheat and rye and clovers and all these different types of things. And it builds up that soil to be able to have a very high quality, nutrient dense soil that can feed the plants. And then when the deer eat it, they're getting the highest nutrition. Now, typically, when you do all of this, like the first year, you will see body gains on the wildlife, depending how much food you're providing. That's usually the first thing that happens is the deer fill out, the ribs don't show anymore, the hips aren't sunk in, they fill out, and then each year after that, you kind of build on it to where you could possibly see different, better sets of antlers and more, a little bit more inches. So you build on it each year, but it's a very, very slow process, basically.
Right.
Were you able to find the name of the fertilizer?
I have a thumbnail picture of it here, but I can't seem to blow it up.
Okay.
I do have it, but
All right. The next step in this,
y-
if huh,
uh,
you got it?
I did. uh, boy. The
Well,
Anderson group, right?
Anderson,
Wasn't it?
yeah,
Wasn't it
Anderson,
Anderson?
yeah,
Yeah, I'm
Anderson,
pretty sure it's the Anderson fertilizer.
yeah.
That's what it is.
It's Anderson fertilizer, but they have a starter fertilizer that has
Yep.
micronutrients in. You have to
Yep.
ask for it, but
Yep. They're out of
it,
Ohio.
yeah, it's there. Um, the next step in that is, you know, on top of food plots, you can supplemental feed. The supplemental feed, I think, is limited in what it can do. I think it maybe can have some benefits, but it's not something that you can do for 3 months and then stop. You lose all your efforts. It's something that you have to do on a continuous basis. Wouldn't you say the same?
I, I, I don't recommend it, but I mean,
Hmm.
people want to do that. They're going to spend a lot of money,
It's a
and I
lot
don't.
of money.
I just don't know how beneficial it is, like you said,
Yeah.
because they're going to naturally leave that anyhow. Like when
Hmm.
acorns start dropping and things, they're going to abandon that. Or when your
Hmm.
food plot's popping, they're when it's palatable, they're going to be in the food plot. I mean, I think you grow more raccoons and stuff like that when you start putting protein pellets out and stuff like
Hmm.
that. And if you're in an area that has hogs or bears, good night.
Yeah.
They're
It's
just
it's
gonna demolish that thing.
it's a very controversial thing with feeding. I mean, it may have some benefit. There's literally no way to prove it in a wild
Not
deer.
really.
Um, Are they going to eat it? Sometimes they might, sometimes they don't.
I tried it one time. They didn't touch it. The
Yep,
raccoons loved it though.
raccoons. You'll get 75% of your pictures will be raccoons
It
and
will. Yeah.
foxes, and it's very expensive to do.
Yeah.
I mean, you can get feeders to where the raccoons can't get in there, and gravity feeders and all this other stuff, but it's an expensive habit to do. Um, I think you're better off with providing actual food.
Yeah. Actual green something.
Yep, I think you're way better off with that. Again, you you plant a quarter acre or an eighth acre food plot. How much benefit are you really having? Can you really grow an animal with a little eighth acre or these little uh 20 by 20 spots? You know what I mean? How
Yeah.
much benefit are you really doing?
Yeah, they're not going to grow a deer off of
Yeah,
that. They just might get a deer to pass through and pause for a second for a
right.
shot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean they might call it a kill plot or a shot plot or something, but that's we're talking about growing a deer,
You
not
need
stopping one from
large
hunting.
you need large destination areas where those deer are feeding in them things
Yep.
all night long.
Yep.
Like,
So you need property and you need your soil to be optimal
mhm,
and you have to be experienced enough to grow something to
mhm,
make it green and you
yep,
need the natural browse to coincide.
yeah. That's why I broke it down in big wood setting and ag,
Yep.
because those ag settings, you have thousands of acres of soybeans. Where those deer going to be out at all night long? They're going to be in those soybeans feeding.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, big wood setting, you might get some, little half acre food plot here, acre food plot. They may hit them a little bit, but they're going to be traveling. It's just it's very difficult to say that you're growing deer.
Right.
It's very difficult to do on small properties.
And it depends on the time of the year. I mean,
Yeah.
like I said, when the acorns are dropping, they don't necessarily hit the plots, and
Hmm.
then that's when everybody's screaming October law. Yeah,
Hmm.
well, because the deer are somewhere else where something else is more plentiful. When the apples are dropping, when acorns are dropping, when the beech nuts are dropping, when the little wild berries, everything are ripe. y- Yeah, and then when the rut starts, they're off running around when they get pressured, they're not there. It's all situational,
Very.
but but it's it's and then like I said, when the rut starts, you think you've seen this deer all summer long, and then it disappears on you in hunting season, right?
Hmm.
When archery starts, well, why do you think that is? I mean, they're off running does somewhere. They might be 5 miles away
Hmm.
now, and you thought you grew a deer and had a chance at it. Well, you might have one that patterns and it stays, but more than likely you're not. But
Hmm.
you might have someone else's deer move in, So I mean, to grow one single buck is a hard thing to try to do.
Hmm. Very situational for
So
sure.
you just want to be a provider. You
Hmm.
want to have the optimal spot.
Hmm. Yep. The next foundation piece to this is obviously security. If
Yeah,
if you're trying to do this and you're just going into your property, four wheelers, walking, hiking, hunting, walking your stands, blowing a deer out, and you're just pushing them out, to your neighbors, and then you ever walk into your property and a couple seconds later you hear a boom. That's happened to me before.
oh boy.
Well, you done bumped something and it pushed it off to a neighbor and it got shot. So again, if you guys have these little 5 acre I'm not making fun of it. I'm just giving you realistic situations. You have these little 5, 10 acre properties and you're trying to grow these big giant deer. It's not going to happen. Those deer are going to cross boundaries. They're going to leave your property, go to your neighbor's house, and they're going to get shot. If you have a large property, a large hundreds of acres, you can protect those deer. You don't need that large. You can do it on 100 acres, but you can protect those deer in specific bedding areas. Hold the deer, in theory, hold them during the daylight, and then they feed on your plots or something, and then they go out into an ag field or something in the afternoon.
Yeah.
That's an ideal situation. Does it happen that way? Probably not. It's a good theory, and I guess it could happen, but again, very situational. Um,
There again, you brought up a good point. If you're spoiled and have a bunch of land, where most hunters don't own a lot of land, you
no,
know.
that's what I'm saying. It's very
So
situational.
yeah, if you're somewhere and you have land or you've inherited a nice piece, it is going to be easier for you to do that.
100%.
Like you said, you can kind of shield them from the public and the pressure,
hmm
and give them a place, a deep dark area to go to, you know,
Yep.
that doesn't get any pressure, and you provide enough of the food and you have enough of the browse. Yeah, it's way easier for that guy to grow a buck.
hmm
uh I think the questions you're getting, though, someone wanting to, how do I grow a big buck? I think those are the guys that, like you're saying, they probably only have 10 acres or something,
hmm
and they want to know how to grow one. Well, I hate to break it to you, man, but you may never grow a good buck.
Yeah. You might see, you know, a deer, a buck, and
Oh
then
yeah,
all of a sudden the next year he looks bigger. Well, he got bigger because he had a birthday.
yeah,
So technically you can say you grew a bigger deer because it lived and it got bigger the next year. But I'm talking physically putting on inches of it can happen. It does happen, but it's very situational. Um, but again, we're not making fun of guys that have 5, 10 acres, but I'm giving you realistic
no,
situations
no, because
because
my personal situation, like Dave was saying, I have a piece there's a field 22 acres, but I plant about 2 acres of food, and I rely on neighboring properties to hold the deer
hmm
because I have field and the neighboring properties have woods.
hmm
One of the properties beside me, well, actually, two pieces down from me, is swamp. So I draw a lot of deer out of the swamp, and I have another neighbor behind that has 50 acres, and so on and so forth. And I rely on those deer to show up because I'm supplying something else that they don't have.
hmm
It's all balance. I mean, they've got, after they eat all that woody browse, they've got to go somewhere green to get their moisture and their other vitamins that they need. And they go regurgitate and sit there and chew cud. you know but yeah, I'm supplying something they don't have.
hmm
So there's there's a key for me.
hmm Yeah, for sure.
So I'm supplying that, and hopefully they're going somewhere nice, dark, damp, secluded space and not getting hunted,
hmm
and
Yeah,
they'll keep revisiting my plots.
right. If you're in, say you got 500 acres, your property sits in the middle of 500 acres. You got a little 40-acre property. To physically grow a deer, it's probably not going to be impossible. Are some deer going to advance to the next age class? Yeah, sure. They do every year. But for you to physically put inches on that deer, it's probably not going to to happen. If you're in the middle of all the hunting pressure all the way around, all of a sudden you're in the center, those deer are going to walk through neighboring properties. You could be feeding all this protein stuff to this deer and food plots and this and that and the other. It crosses that boundary and it gets shot. So could you advance it? Yeah, it could miss a hunter. I mean, not every deer gets shot. I mean, obviously, but it's again, it's very hard. Um, I think the next step in this is probably one of the most important ones is birthdays.
Yeah, for sure.
If you don't give deer, if you just shoot everything that you see because you have a buck tag and you have to fill that buck tag because you don't want to feel left out, and you continuously shoot all the small ones, that deer is not going to live.
Mm.
And it's always said, well, if I don't shoot it, my neighbor will. You don't know that.
No,
You don't know that. That deer could
you don't
live.
know that.
It's going to miss neighbors. Trust me. It's just because you think that doesn't mean it's true. If you shoot it, then it definitely won't live.
I I
Um,
had I
look at
had the
your look at your
perfect example.
mother-in-law's.
Yeah, I had that perfect example this year where I had 4 deer that I would have liked to have probably shot, but I was trying to hold out for my number 1.
Hmm.
Well, number 1, as I told everybody on past podcasts, got shot by a young girl with a with a crossbow
She
across the
sh-
road. But
she
guess
showed
what?
you up.
But guess what she was doing? She was hunting somewhere where the deer was bedding, obviously, and just happened to be there and cut it off on its way crossing the road to come to me, or
Hmm.
across the road to my plots. Um, what was my point? My point was that I've been farming for deer over there for the past 4 years.
Hmm.
Guess how many bucks I shot?
None.
None. I have never shot a buck on that property. I've passed every buck.
And
And
4 years later.
now I'm into the 4th year
Hmm.
and I am seeing, like I said, I had 4 deer I wanted to shoot. And two of them, two of them were 130 plus inches. And the other two were probably around 120. But I had the opportunity to shoot one of the 138 point and I passed them. And I had a chance to shoot one of the 120s and I passed him. So guess what? As far as I know, they made it.
Hmm.
I haven't heard or seen anybody getting them. All I know is that little girl shot my number 1. So those 3 are still running around as far as I know. So next year,
Hmm.
birthday time comes and they should be bigger.
Well, what's the takeaway from that? Look how long it took for that to take place. It's not a fast process.
No, it took
It
4 years.
4 years. And the reason it took 4 years is because one, you never did anything over there. There was no food.
No,
You provided tons of extra food.
mhm.
What 3 acres of it. You worked on the field. You were mowing. You had all kinds of you know
Yeah, I mean,
checking.
I plant 2 acres of food plot,
Right,
but I mow these fields,
right.
and the
They were
fields are
limed and
full of
right.
clovers,
Hmm.
and regular orchard grasses and stuff that the deer love.
Yeah, and
Like
they're in
some
there
of
all
them,
night long.
yeah, some of them just walk through my plot and go out to the grass and eat,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah, they're
So,
out there feeding all night long.
yeah, yeah,
So all
for
that
sure.
food that was extra and you passed the deer, and then this year you actually had quality bucks to
Yeah,
shoot. It's
yeah,
just a girl showed you up.
yeah,
So
yeah.
um that's what it takes though, like years. Like
You
it's
have to
not
be
something
you have to be willing to pass on some of them,
right. I mean,
and
another
that's hard
example.
for me.
Yeah.
It's real hard for me because, uh we grew up on the deer meat
Mhm.
and I raised my family on deer meat. And I'm in a situation now, though. I'm in a whole different situation because my kids are older and one of them has a health issue and he can't eat the deer meat. So, as a family, we're not eating as much.
Mhm.
So, uh, oh boy, I lost my train of thought. So I'm being more picky.
Yeah.
That was the moral of the story. So I
Right.
can be more picky with the deer that I shoot.
Mhm.
So, you know, uh I will I'm not saying I won't shoot a smaller buck, but if I can shoot, I'm going to try to shoot the biggest one I can,
Mhm.
obviously.
Yeah.
And cuz the does to me taste better anyhow. So I can shoot any does I want and I hold out for a buck.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I did
Another
with a rifle. It ended
right,
up
yeah.
being with the rifle, but
Right. Another takeaway to that is, you again, you could have this 20 acres or something and you continuously pass deer. You continuously pass them, pass them, pass them, and they go off to the neighbors and make a shot.
some of them
You
will.
know, a perfect situation. would be to have all your neighbors on that same mentality within a 10-mile freaking radius,
Hmm.
then you could make something happen.
Yeah.
But how realistic is that? Not
Not
really
very.
realistic.
Not
That's what I'm
very,
s
because the area I live in, especially, is
Mhm.
all camps, and
Yes.
those people will come from the city, and they come up for the weekend, and the first legal deer they can shoot, they will shoot it
Mhm.
and
And
go
that's
back to
perfectly
camp.
fine.
Yeah, and that's fine. I don't care. But then then they can go back to camp and party it up and go back home.
Mhm.
And
Yep.
they got their meat for the year. They're happy,
Yep.
and that's fine with me too, because that gets them out of my hair and lets the deer
Mhm.
settle down.
Mhm.
You know, but
Yeah.
yeah, but
I'm
they're not going to do that here.
it's gonna be difficult to do anywhere unless you're in a good known area where you got hot,
Yeah,
like, whatever quality whatever deer hunters are there that want these bigger deer. Everybody gets on the same page, and usually you see that in, like, known areas for big deer because all these guys are doing it.
yeah,
If
like a
you go
QDMA type of thing, like
right, like,
quality
if
deer management. They
yep,
all are on the same page,
yeah,
and they
yeah,
make a pact. We're not going to shoot anything that's less than 130 inches, or
mhm.
something like
Like,
that.
I used to spend a lot of time in, like, I believe it was Muskegon County, Ohio, Licking County, Knox County. Those 3 counties, well, 15 years ago, they were the top 3 counties in Ohio for quality bucks, trophy bucks. In those counties, you could just tell by talking to somebody for 5 minutes that they that's what they did. And that in those
Yeah,
counties, those people held out, they passed younger deer, and some of the
mhm,
biggest trophy bucks from Ohio came from those 3 counties. I've
yeah,
seen it in Kentucky, I've seen it in parts of Maryland. Like, if you go to Queen Anne's County, Kent County, um, Charles County, those counties in Maryland are known for big bucks. Well, what is the trend in that situation? But tons of agricultural culture, swamps and thickets and hedgerows, more food. You have more sunlight. You have corn and beans. You have a different set of hunters that have a mindset of big deer, so they pass them. So it's very situational, and we're talking about this because people. I get phone calls from consulting people, clients, potential, and they just have so unrealistic goals that you just can't help them.
yeah.
They're not they're asking the wrong questions, and their mindset is in the wrong place.
Well,
Um,
I'll tell you what helped Pennsylvania out. Whether you like it or not, Pennsylvania went to an antler restriction program.
mhm, yep,
And the first couple years, everybody was just crying and moaning. Oh man, because they weren't allowed to shoot spikes and 4 points anymore.
mhm,
They weren't going to get a deer. Their family was going to starve without that deer. Well, I would think now that all those people that were upset are probably not so upset anymore, because now when you see a buck, usually it's a racked buck, and it's usually pretty easy to tell if it's big enough to shoot or it's not,
mhm,
because now there's so many more nicer racked bucks running around, that it's if you don't if you see a deer and it's a buck and it's not big enough, just give it a few minutes. You'll probably see another one. I
mhm,
mean, because there is a lot of deer, uh, and that program has helped the size of the bucks in Pennsylvania, whether they like it or not. I mean, you can go out into my pool building, and you've been out there and seen it all. And I have all those deer skull caps and racks screwed up to the joists around my building of all the bucks I've shot. You can see the progression. Like
mhm,
all the little ones I used to shoot spikes and 4 points and little 6 points and stuff. And then you can tell when the antler restrictions kicked in, because they got bigger and bigger and bigger. And then you go up into my hallway and see the big bucks I got mounted and stuff. And that guy right there, I would have never seen a buck like that ever
mhm,
10 years ago. Never,
right,
never. Unless you was out spotting and you seen it in 2 in the morning, or yeah, you can't see at 2 in the morning. That's illegal. 11 p.m. I think is the latest you could spot. But anyhow, you'd see a buck like that maybe out in the middle of a field eating corn or something, while you was spotting. But now you get on a forum on Facebook and all you see is bucks like that. You know, kids shooting them. I love to see the kids shoot them. That's great.
Hmm.
Or old timers, people over 70 or whatever. I love seeing them get their huge bucks, but yeah, there's so many more deer like that out there, you know, whereas like I said years ago, you never seen stuff like that
Hmm.
because somebody shot that as a 4 point
Right.
and it didn't get to grow. It didn't have, 3 or 4 more birthdays to grow this big, you
Hmm.
know.
And
And that is key.
yeah, and that may not be for everybody, and that's perfectly fine.
Yeah,
But
whatever.
you get these people that are stuck in an area that only has small bucks, but they're
Yeah.
constantly crying about it. What can you? There's no point in crying about it. You got to move someplace else. You got to find a new place to hunt.
Either that or like
Um,
you said, you gotta get with your neighbors and
yes,
have a
it's
pact. We're not
yeah. I
gonna shoot
mean,
anything, smaller.
yeah, it's very hard to do. It would have to be like a county by county basis. Like that whole county's on the same page where, hey, we're not going to shoot anything unless it's a 4-year-old or bigger, or if you go by inches, whatever it
Yeah.
is.
Or get on a lease with a group of guys that have a
Yes.
pact.
Where you got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 800 acres. I mean, there's leases that you can get that are 2, 3,000 acres from like timber companies where you can lease from. And then you have something where you can grow, physically grow deer. Um, and I think one misconception is I get questions too about water holes. I had somebody ask me, Dave, if I put several water holes on my property, is it going to help grow bigger deer? And the answer is that i- to that is no. It's not. Is it going to help? Is it going to help give them water? Yeah, it's going to help give them water. Deer need water, but where do deer mostly get water from? Vegetation. So with that vegetation, you're getting the nutrients taken in, the micros, the everything that's in that plant. You're getting it through that moisture content. So deer rarely drink water. I mean, they will drink water, but usually they drink it more in the fall than they do in the summertime because you have all the green food. So if you have food plots on your property, you're providing more, moisture content to the deer because they're eating more greens. The moisture comes from the deer's diet through food. So is water holes going to hurt your deer? No, they're not going to hurt it, but it's not going to grow grow a deer.
Yeah.
So I think the takeaway to this, to where people have, the foundation pieces to it, is obviously food, cover, big woods, ag settings, realistic goals, birthdays, security, all that type of stuff. But I think the main thing is birthdays for people to focus on,
Yeah.
and security.
Yeah.
If you can
Start with
provide
the things you can control.
right. But I think the two most important ones would be security. I think it would be easier for people to give deer birthdays and
Yeah.
security than it would be to provide an eighth acre food plot and think you're going to grow the deer. Because if the deer doesn't have a birthday, it's definitely not going to get bigger.
Nope.
It's dead. It can't grow no more.
Yep.
So if you can provide security, timber, select cuts, whatever, switchgrass fields, whatever it is, whatever you have to do to provide security to hold that deer during the daylight, and then be able to work with neighbors possibly, or if you have a large enough property to give it birthdays. That's the two takeaways. Because again, if you shoot it and it doesn't get a birthday, it's not getting bigger, guys.
Right.
It's dead. So have that mindset of, it's a long process. You got to have birthdays. How do we get bigger? We have birthdays. We get older. We get more mature. Well, sometimes. Um, and you just get wiser, and that's what deer have to have, is they gotta have birthdays, guys. You can't if you want to grow deer. Like I see people all the time on YouTube, or I talk to them in person. They're just like, yeah, I want to shoot this 160-inch deer, but all my deer are on my property are just 2 years old.
Yeah.
It's
So are
just
you
not
willing? Yes. Are you willing to wait 6 years now to grow
right.
that?
It just it you got to have realistic goals.
Yeah.
That's my takeaway from it. Like security cover and birthdays.
So now
The
you turned the pyramid upside down, Dave. Way to go.
mhm. I know.
The foundation is uprooted.
Yep. I mean, obviously, you gotta have food, you gotta have browse, you gotta
Yeah.
have all this stuff take place, um, into a habitat program per se. But if you have realize 5, 10, 20, 30, 40 acres, you are limited, very limited to physically grow deer. You may be able to advance them, to the next age class a little bit, because not all of them are going to get shot. But to really, for that to really take place, talk to all four of your neighbors that's surrounding four sides of your property and get them on the same base. And within 2 to 3 years, you see major results.
Yeah, in no way is this supposed to be a discouraging video or or
No,
podcast, that we're beating you, browbeating you, saying you can't grow these deer. But
it's
it's just
realistic.
gonna yeah, it's realistic. It's gonna be really hard for you to grow a one specific deer to a 150, 161. We're not saying it can't happen. It's just going to be hard to do unless you have all the things that were forementioned,
Hmm.
and like he said, birthdays, and get your neighbors or you to quit shooting them when they're 2 year olds and just do the things you can control. You
Hmm.
know, you have to start there. You have to start somewhere.
Hmm.
So, yeah, if you can supplementally plant the plots, it's not going to hurt anything to do it.
Hmm.
Uh, are you going to physically put weight on them? Maybe not if you don't have enough food.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean,
And if
yeah,
you're,
not trying to be discouraging at all because
yeah.
I don't have a bunch of land, but I've got the tables tipped in my direction because I have land all around me. I'm
Hmm.
supplying what they want,
Right.
and I do have some neighbors, a couple of them anyhow. I do have a couple neighbors that are on board. Like they don't shoot small stuff,
Hmm.
you know.
It doesn't
S-
take much. Like you don't have to be like a maniac with it. If you just pass just a couple bucks in a couple years, it really shows.
Well, I don't want to change the subject, but getting back to one of the podcasts we had about the doe factory, if you have spring and summer plots and you're going to have
Hmm.
all these does, and the does are going to keep your bucks away.
Hmm.
Hogwash. I had a buck factory this year at my plot. I had so many spikes and threes and fours and fives and some sixes that were half decent, that are up and coming. I seen more bucks this year than I did doe.
Hmm.
So you can't tell me that passing up all them little ones isn't going to pay it forward
Hmm.
because in the next 2 to 3 years, I should be overrun with bucks.
Hmm.
You know, not only that, but think about how many people aren't hunting anymore. We used to talk about the orange armies, and all that stuff. Well, I don't know about you, but I didn't see that many people when I hunted this year.
Yeah, I didn't see a whole bunch either.
I didn't see a whole bunch. So there's less and less people going out every year. So that means the deer are populating and the population of hunters is going down. So that's more deer for you to be
Hmm.
able to pass on and to grow up and have to choose from.
Yeah. And if you
So
and if it's not you, like if you just don't care about that situation, then just don't cry about that there's no big deer.
yeah,
And or move someplace else. I mean, it's not
yeah,
for everybody. I mean, I'm not a trophy hunter per se. Like I don't want to shoot something small, but I'll gladly shoot a 130-inch deer, 140. Like I don't need 170s. I just not me.
no,
Um, if I see a buck and I'm excited about it, then I'll shoot it. It's not going to be something small like 110-inch deer. I don't want to shoot that because I've already shot dozens of that. I don't need to
yeah,
shoot that. So as I get older, I'm more picky, and I just don't want to shoot it. And that's why this year I did not shoot a buck. I didn't shoot a buck this year. I saw tons of bucks. I just did not see a buck that was worth shooting that got me excited. Um, so I don't need to shoot a buck. This year I set you know, like a high standard that I almost was looking for something that wasn't there.
Yeah, I mean, that's
That's
what
a
happens. People
yeah.
ghost themselves.
Yeah, I literally did that to myself this year. Because I had so many public lands that I was focusing on. I had 37 cell cams out, and I had big bucks on
S-
camera. I
Yes.
just didn't get to see them.
Yes.
Um, and I
Sometimes that's the problem, I think.
yeah,
People see what they've had on trail camera and they're like, I'm
hmm
I'm holding out for that one.
right, and that's what I
Well,
did.
that one may never show back up.
Yeah, and I did see some good ones that were far away that I would have shot. Um, but yeah, I literally did it to myself by looking for something that wasn't there,
You psyched
basically.
yourself up.
I did, but that's the way it goes. I don't need to shoot a buck. Like I
Yeah.
got I got deer I don't need to shoot a buck. So it's whatever your mindset is, whatever your goals are. Um, yeah, and
Yeah,
I
I
got
mean, don't let
I
your ego get so big that you think you have to put one on Facebook,
right. I
you
got
know.
I got two deer that I gotta freaking pay for at the taxidermist. I'm waiting to
From
get back
last year.
from last year. I got $2 that I gotta pay for. So like, how much do you want your taxidermy bill to be? I mean, it's like, and it's not cheap. I
I've
mean, that's gonna
showed you I've showed you some public land giants.
mhm.
I mean, giants that I had on film while they were still in velvet. Of course, they all look like giants in velvet, but I've showed you some that were over 150 inches and stuff. But have I ever seen one during archery with a bow in my hand? No,
It's
never
public
did.
land.
Never
Tough.
did. It
Yeah,
is
it's not
tough.
easy.
And I would just be hunting ghosts all the time if I just was waiting on one of them.
Right.
And and if I put all my time in that one spot, sitting there, you know, day in, day out, weeks on end, waiting for that one buck and not going and hitting all these other properties, which it worked out for me. I go and, I have other properties I go and I can hunt and kill a buck, that it's a decent caliber.
Mm,
But what I'm getting at is sometimes people they zone in on that one that they saw on a trail camera. And
yeah.
who knows if it might have got hit by a car 3 weeks ago. You don't even know that.
Mhm.
You might be
Well, look
hunting
at
ghost.
well, look at the ones I was sending you in early September. From the place I'm not going to talk
Yeah.
about, but I mean, it had bases like that. I mean,
Right.
they were there.
Yeah.
Um, it's just sometimes it doesn't work out. So,
Yeah.
um, it's I mean, I'm not losing sleep about it. It's just it is what it is. That's what I'm saying. Like people get bummed out. You just it is what it
Well,
is.
I get bummed out. I think that's a natural thing. You get bummed out if you go
I
all
don't get
season
bummed
and you're
out.
not seeing nothing there.
You know what I'm bummed out about? You shot my buck.
Yeah,
I hate you for that.
I know.
Nah, I don't care. That's the way it goes.
Yeah, but it ain't the only one. And
No,
guess where he's going? He's
I'm
going
going.
back.
I'm going back this weekend.
He's going
I got
back.
I got 2 more permits for buck, deer.
Yeah,
So,
man.
or I should say Sika.
Yes,
So
Sika.
somebody don't correct me. Sika.
You shooting a big 4 point?
Yeah, if I see this Sika decent one, I'm
Yeah,
blasting.
there that the one 4 point I seen was half decent.
Yeah, that was a long time ago though. You know how many
Yeah,
deer probably been shot in there so far?
maybe.
Um, we'll see, but they're still there, and I'm gonna go for them. So maybe next week we might be bringing a Sika deer
A
update.
Sika update for the new year.
Yep. Anyway,
This
guys,
is our
we're up to
Christmas special, basically.
it is, yeah. So
So we want
couple
to wish
things,
everybody a Merry Christmas.
yeah, a couple things to announce here. Again, thanks for listening for an entire year.
Yeah,
Leave us some comments, please, on the actual audio side, the
right.
iTunes podcast, Spotify. Leave us some comments. I appreciate everybody listening.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and we're recording on today's the what 20th. So the next
Yeah,
time we
20th.
record will be after Christmas. So I want to wish everybody Merry Christmas. We'll be recording next week, which will be season 2 of the podcast, and we're going to keep going. So
Yeah.
um, again, thanks to everybody. Merry Christmas. Drop us some comments. You can subscribe to Chris's channel and drop in
Yeah,
some comments. And
I've got a giveaway going.
yeah, he's got a
I'm
giveaway.
I'm nearing a milestone. I'm going to be giving away a one-off engraved blade knife.
Hmm.
So get over and subscribe to City Sticker Chris channel,
Yep.
and yeah, get in on that. Get subscribed, and it'll be a randomly picked subscriber that'll be winning.
Yeah. So a lot going on, and then next year we'll be pumping out the content. And I'll be on a new farm, pumping out videos, and um, we'll just keep on keeping on.
Yeah, man.
So
See you
good luck
guys
to
later.
everybody, and Merry
Merry
Christmas.
Christmas.
Later.
See ya.